This video will focus on skeletal muscle tissue. I want to draw your attention to the histology slide that we can see. Skeletal muscle, your muscles, perhaps your biceps brachii, is an organ. The muscle tissue within that organ is organized through a series of connective tissue layers. The entire muscle is surrounded by the epimysium, which is a connective tissue layer that binds the entire muscle as a group. We can see in the histology image, this microscope image, that the muscle tissue runs in both a longitudinal direction, as we see here, or here, and a transverse section. So if you were to look at the model, we can see that the fiber runs in a longitudinal direction, or if we were to look at it from the top, we would see it from a transverse section. If we look at the histology slide, we can see that the muscle tissue is surrounded in, or is organized into smaller bundles. These smaller bundles are called fascicles. Each fascicle is surrounded by a connective tissue layer, a membrane called the perimysium, P-E-R-I, mesium. If we look at a higher magnification, so I've moved from the 4x objective to the 10x objective, we can see the organization of the fascicle into bundles of muscle tissue. Each fascicle contains between 10 and 100 individual muscle cells. Muscle cells have a special name. We call them muscle fibers. So the fascicle is surrounded by the perimysium, and each muscle cell or muscle fiber, as we see in the model, is surrounded by the epimysium, which on this model is a gray membrane. I want to draw your attention to the longitudinal muscle fibers. So here we can see the model from the top, and it allows us to see that transverse section of the muscle cell, which is exactly what we would see right here. We can see that this is an individual cell. We can see the nucleus on the side. You can't quite see that on the model because the nucleus is a little bit lower on the model. But here is one muscle cell or one muscle fiber. So if we go back to a longitudinal view of our model, and I'm going to move the slide slightly to the right, we can see this longitudinal muscle tissue running from left to right on our slide. Muscle tissue, skeletal muscle tissue, is multinucleate and striated. The striations come from the contractile portion of the muscle tissue, and that's called the sarcomere. The striations are actually light bands and dark bands that give the muscle tissue its striped appearance. The blue structures that you can see are an infolding of the plasma membrane called the T-tubule. T-tubule stands for transverse tubule. You can see that the blue T-tubule is adjacent to a structure that kind of resembles the endoplasmic reticulum. It's a specialized reticulum called the sarcoplasmic reticulum. Sarco is another prefix for muscle. So the sarcoplasmic reticulum will store calcium, and it will store calcium inside that sarcoplasmic reticulum until it receives a stimulus from the neuron, which is on the right-hand side of the model. When this electrical impulse arrives at the neuromuscular junction, which you can see on the right-hand side of the model, the muscle will contract. The mechanism of that you'll discuss in lecture.